I gave 26 years of my life to that company. My name's Joan, and for more than 2 decades, that office had been my second home. I wasn't just an employee, I was someone they trusted with their biggest projects, their toughest clients, their biggest secrets. Or at least, that's what I believed. I spent countless nights working late, missing dinners, birthdays, anniversaries. My kids grew up with me only half present. My wife learned to accept silent dinners and sleepy conversations, all because I believed. If I stayed loyal, they would stay loyal too. When I first joined, we were just a tiny company renting a cramped space in a forgotten corner of the city. I still remember those early days. The buzz of ideas, the excitement in the air, the friendships we built. I wasn't just another face in the crowd back then. I helped build that place from the ground up. I knew the ins and outs of every department. I wasn't the smartest or the flashiest, but I was steady, reliable. They used to say, "If Joan's on it, you can sleep peacefully." Years rolled by and the company grew. Bigger offices, fancier titles, new faces. But I stayed the same. Faithful to the work, faithful to the people. I mentored the younger employees, always picking them up when they stumbled, teaching them the lessons no one else bothered to. I thought, maybe that counted for something. But deep down, I started noticing little cracks. A new generation was taking over. Young, ambitious, hungry for results overnight. They didn't care about loyalty or history. They cared about numbers, appearances. They smiled at me in meetings but forgot my name in emails. I brushed it off, told myself it was just the way things were now. After all, I was still needed. I still mattered. At least that's what I told myself. Until that day, the day that would burn itself into my memory forever. It was a Thursday afternoon. I was called into the CEO's office. Nothing unusual. I had monthly check-ins with him. I thought maybe we'd talk about a project or maybe even a long overdue appreciation. I even straightened my tie a little before walking in like some foolish kid seeking approval. He didn't even look up when I entered, just motioned for me to sit down with a cold flick of his hand. The room felt colder than usual. The sun outside was shining bright, but inside it felt like winter had seeped into the walls. And then, without any warning, without any hesitation, he said it. "Joan, we don't think you're keeping up anymore. You've become, well, useless. A dead weight. It's time we moved forward." Useless. That word hit me harder than any slap could have. 26 years, and that's what I was to them now. Useless? I sat there, frozen, trying to process it, trying to find something to say, maybe defend myself, maybe remind him of all the years, the sacrifices, the loyalty, but nothing came out, just silence. And he didn't even flinch, didn't even pretend to feel bad. He just leaned back in his chair, tapping his pen against the desk like he was bored already, like my story, my life, was just another meeting he had to get through. I nodded numbly, stood up, and walked out of that office, feeling like my whole world had been turned upside down in seconds. They say you can hear your heart break when it's shattered badly enough. I didn't believe that until that day. But what they didn't know, what he didn't know, was that under all that quiet sadness, something else was beginning to grow inside me. A slow, burning fire. And I promised myself they were going to regret underestimating me. I barely remember walking out of the office that day. My legs carried me, but my mind was somewhere else, stuck on repeat, hearing that word over and over again. Useless, useless, useless. It echoed louder with every step. I got into my old car, the same one I used to drive when we started this company, back when dreams were bigger than budgets, and just sat there. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I stared out through the windshield, watching people pass by, laughing, moving on with their lives like nothing had happened. Like my world hadn't just fallen apart. I thought about my family. How would I tell them? My wife, Lisa, she knew how hard I worked. She saw the late nights, the early mornings. She knew the toll it had taken. She had stood by me through everything. My kids, they were grown now, living their own lives, but still. What would they think? Their old man getting kicked to the curb like yesterday's trash. Shame burned inside me, hotter than anything else. Not anger. Not yet. Just this heavy, crushing shame. Like somehow it was my fault. Like maybe I really had become useless. Maybe I should have learned those new softwares, taken those online courses, worn sharper suits, been louder in meetings instead of sticking to what I knew best. I sat there for what felt like hours, just drowning in it. When I finally got home, Lisa was waiting for me. One look at my face and she knew. She didn't ask. She just opened her arms and I fell into them like a broken man. I told her everything, every word he said, every look I got from the others on my way out. And when I finished, when I finally lifted my head to meet her eyes, I expected to see pity, or worse, disappointment. But what I saw instead was fire. "You gave them everything, Joan," she said, her voice shaking. "Everything. And this is how they repay you?" She wasn't sad. She was furious. Furious for me. Furious at them. And somehow that helped. It didn't fix the hole inside me, but it patched it up just enough for me to breathe again. We sat there together in the living room that night, not talking much, just sitting, just existing. And somewhere, in that heavy silence, I realized something. I wasn't useless. I was experienced. I was knowledgeable. I had skills that no one could take away from me, no matter how many young faces they threw into that office. No matter how shiny their degrees or fancy their titles were, they could fire me. They could erase my name from the company newsletters. They could strip away my title and keycard, but they couldn't erase what I knew because, you see, I didn't just work there. I built that place. I knew its foundation, its flaws, its hidden cracks. And most importantly, I knew things about their business that they had long forgotten, secrets they thought were buried, systems they still depended on without even realizing it. If they thought they could just throw me away like an old shoe and move on, they had another thing coming. For the first time since that meeting, I felt something other than shame. I felt purpose. I wasn't going to sit quietly and disappear. I was going to make them remember me. And when I was done, they would realize exactly what they had lost. They would wish they had never called me useless. The next morning, I didn't sleep in, I didn't sulk. I woke up before the sun rose, just like I had every day for the past 25 years. My body was used to it, but this time, my mind was sharper. Focused, fueled by something different, not obligation, not routine, but revenge. Lisa handed me my coffee without a word. She just gave me a small nod, the kind of nod that says, "Go do what you have to do." I sat down at the kitchen table with my old notebook, the one I used to carry in the early years of the company, back when every idea mattered and every move counted. I opened it and started writing. Names, numbers, processes. I remembered it all. Back then, when we couldn't afford high-tech software or cloud storage, everything went into that book. Employee shortcuts, vendor backdoors, system overlaps, data vulnerabilities. Even a few skeletons I was forced to bury to protect the company's name. Things we all agreed to hide in those desperate years just to keep the company afloat. They had no idea I still remembered. Or maybe they thought I was too old to recall that much detail. But they were wrong. So I started crafting a plan. Not out of spite, not entirely. It was about respect, about dignity, about teaching them that loyalty and experience can't be replaced by youth and trendiness. I spent hours mapping out everything I remembered about the company's infrastructure, not the public-facing side, but the inner workings. The parts only a handful of people had ever touched, people like me. There was one particular system, a legacy tool that the company still relied on, buried beneath all their new tech layers. Everyone assumed it had been updated and integrated long ago, but I knew better. That system was fragile, outdated, and riddled with old code that only I knew how to stabilize. Without me, that system was a ticking time bomb. I didn't need to touch anything or hack into their servers. I didn't want to break the law, I just needed to wait. Because eventually, it would break on its own, and when it did, they would have no idea how to fix it. They'd scramble, they'd call the IT team, they'd reach out to consultants, and then they'd remember the man they called useless. I spent the next few weeks preparing, updating my resume, reaching out to old contacts, people who respected me, people who remembered how much I had done over the years. And while I did that, I kept my ears open. I knew people on the inside, workers who were just as shocked by my sudden dismissal. Some of them reached out quietly, checking on me, and I listened carefully to everything they said. The young guy they hired to replace me? He was struggling, trying to act confident but making rookie mistakes, breaking things he didn't understand. My former assistant sent me a message one night. He crashed one of the internal systems today. We had to delay 3 deliveries. I smiled. Not because I wanted anyone to suffer. That's never who I was. But because the cracks were already showing. And that's when I knew. I wouldn't have to lift a finger. All I had to do was wait. Wait for the storm I knew was coming. Because they didn't just replace me, they removed the pillar that kept the building standing, and once it collapsed, I'd be the only one left who knew how to rebuild it. 3 weeks had passed since my exit, and the cracks I'd predicted weren't just forming, they were widening fast. My phone buzzed constantly, not with job offers, not yet, but with whispers from inside. Former colleagues, old allies, even the cleaning staff I used to chat with during late nights, they all had stories, and they all pointed to one thing: chaos. The new guy, Kyle, barely 30, all confidence and charisma but no depth, had already made some serious missteps. He'd changed the vendor scheduling software without understanding how it connected to our warehouse systems. As a result, 2 of our top suppliers had deliveries rerouted to the wrong cities. Then came the budget errors. The finance team discovered misallocated funds. Nothing illegal, just sloppy, but enough to raise flags during the quarterly audit. And when the regional manager questioned him about it, Kyle did what insecure people do. He blamed everyone else. They had fired me in a blink. No warning, no respect, no exit meeting, but now they were holding crisis meetings every other day, trying to fix what Kyle was doing. And I wasn't even there. My wife Lisa sat across from me one evening, watching me scribble again in my old notebook. She took a sip of her tea and asked softly, "Are you enjoying this?" I paused. Enjoying wasn't the word, but I couldn't deny the satisfaction. I had given this company everything, missed birthdays, skipped vacations, worked through my father's funeral because we were closing a merger. I never complained, I never asked for more, and they replaced me like I was a worn-out tire. So no, I wasn't enjoying it, but I felt justified. I looked up at her. "I just want them to remember who I am." She nodded, and that was enough. Then came the call, not from the CEO, not yet. It was Mike, the logistics manager. One of the few good people left at the company. He sounded stressed, almost frantic. "Joan," he said, skipping pleasantries, "we need your help." I let that hang in the air for a moment. "Thought I was useless?" He sighed. "I never believed that. They made a mistake. Look, the legacy system's down. None of us can access the routing data for the southern region. Trucks are stalled, clients are calling, Kyle's freaking out." I leaned back. My fingers tapped the side of my coffee cup. Slowly. "I warned them about that system years ago," I said. "It needed a full rebuild, not just patches." "Yeah, and you were the only one who understood its architecture. You built most of it. Please, man, just tell me what to do." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I asked him something else. "Is the board aware of the collapse?" "Not yet. They're being kept out of it for now, but if this doesn't get fixed tonight, everyone will know by morning." Perfect. I gave him a few steps. Just enough to get the wheels turning again. Not a full fix. That would have taken hours, but enough for them to breathe a little. "Thanks," Mike said, almost whispering. "I owe you." "You don't?" I replied. "But they do." That night, I knew the story would spread through the office like wildfire. The old man they discarded. He just saved them from outside the walls they locked him out of. I went to bed that night with my mind racing. Not with anger, not anymore, but with possibilities. Because if they were desperate enough to call me once, they'd call again, and next time I'd be ready. 2 days passed before the next call came. It wasn't Mike this time. It was her, Cynthia Hart, the Chief Operations Officer, and the same person who'd signed my termination papers without blinking. I stared at her name on the screen for a while before answering. My heart wasn't racing, my hands weren't shaking. I was calm, too calm. "Joan," she said. Her voice was tight, polite, but I could hear the tension behind it. "I wanted to personally thank you for helping with the systems issue. Mike told me you saved the entire Southern Route operation." "Did I?" I replied, letting the silence hang long enough to make her squirm. "Yes, you did," she continued. "Listen, I know your exit wasn't handled the best way." I let out a low breath. "You fired me by courier letter, Cynthia. After 25 years, not even a phone call." There was a pause. "I understand you're upset." "I'm not upset," I replied. "I'm just watching." She cleared her throat. "Well, we were wondering if you'd be willing to consult temporarily. Help us through some of the transition problems we're facing." "Consult?" I repeated. "So I'm useful again?" Her silence told me everything I needed to know. I didn't say yes, not yet. I told her I'd think about it. But the moment I hung up, I got to work, not to help them, but to remind them who they underestimated. I pulled out old notes, backup copies of every operational document I'd written over the years, system blueprints, vendor maps, even things I knew they no longer had access to. You see, while they were busy chasing shiny degrees and younger hires, I had quietly become the only person who truly understood the heartbeat of that company. And I had more than just knowledge. I had loyalty. From the people still inside, technicians who had learned under me, junior managers I had mentored, even drivers who still remembered how I stayed late during storms to help load trucks. They all reached out, and they were angry. Not just for me, but because the company was falling apart without structure, without care, without family. That's what it used to feel like back when I still had a desk there. So I made a decision. I wouldn't go back to help them fix their mess. I'd show them they were replaceable too. I registered a business name, simple, clean, North Route Logistics. I called up a few vendors, ones who had already complained to me about the delays under Kyle's management. I asked if they were open to trying a new service. Every single one of them said yes. I met with former employees, those who had either quit or been pushed out in the name of modernization. And I told them I was starting something that would be built on what we all once believed in: trust, process, pride. Within a week, I had my first client. Then 3, then 7. And the company that called me old and useless, they started bleeding from the inside. Kyle's mistakes were now public. A major client dropped them after a 3-day delay, caused over $300,000 in losses. Cynthia tried to calm the storm, but without the data I used to manage, they were flying blind. They didn't even know how much they didn't know. That's when the final call came. From the CEO himself, the man who sat across from me at my exit meeting years ago and said, "Joan, the company's going in a new direction. We just don't see a fit for you anymore." His voice, this time, was different. "Joan, we'd like to make things right." I smiled, but I didn't respond, not yet, because the best part of revenge isn't the moment they fall. It's the moment they realize you were the foundation they stood on all along, and now they're standing on sand. The CEO's voice echoed in my head long after the call ended. "We'd like to make things right." But what did that even mean now, after firing me without notice, after Kyle mocked me in front of the entire floor, calling me outdated, slow, just a numbers guy stuck in the past? They didn't just question my work, They questioned me, my worth, my dignity. And now suddenly I was valuable again? I didn't respond to his offer, not because I was unsure, but because I was in control now. That silence was my power, and they felt it. Within days, my small logistics company, North Route, started picking up contracts at an almost ridiculous speed. Word spread fast in our industry, especially among people who were tired of corporations that treated employees like batteries, use them, drain them, and toss them. And while Kyle was struggling to fix broken systems he never even understood, I was building something stronger. Not out of revenge alone, but out of the belief that people deserved better. I hired the ones they overlooked. Marvin, the technician who was let go during budget cuts, the man who could read route software like sheet music. Lisa, the scheduler who once cried in the break room after being denied maternity leave. She was now running our entire operations desk. They didn't just work for me, they believed in me. And clients? They came faster than I expected. Companies who had been waiting weeks for responses from my former employer were shocked at how quickly North Route delivered results. We didn't have fancy buildings or glossy brochures, but we had heart, and we knew what we were doing. Meanwhile, the cracks at my old company were now gaping holes. They held an emergency board meeting when a long-term partner sued them over a missed delivery contract. Kyle tried to shift the blame onto his team, the same team I trained, but no one was buying it. HR opened an internal investigation. There were whispers of mismanagement, even harassment allegations against one of Kyle's hires. The board asked Cynthia to step in, but even she was now unsure how to fix the chaos. And then came the desperate email, sent to my personal inbox. Subject, let's talk, please. From CEO Martin Wilkins. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit there for hours. When I finally read it, my chest didn't tighten. I didn't cry or get angry or feel vindicated. I just smiled, because his words didn't surprise me. He apologized for how things ended. He admitted Kyle's hiring had been a mistake. He said the board wanted to discuss possible collaboration options with me. Collaboration. Not rehiring, not consulting, collaboration. They were no longer offering me a job, they were asking me to save them. But I wasn't the same Joan they had dismissed. I was the woman who built something real after being discarded like yesterday's blueprint. I was no longer part of their story, they were now a footnote in mine, so I didn't respond. Instead, I printed the email, framed it, and hung it right above my desk at North Route, as a reminder of who I am and what they lost. I sat alone in my small but growing office, sipping coffee that Lisa insisted on brewing herself every morning. It was quiet, the kind of quiet I hadn't known in years, not the silence of being ignored or underestimated, but the peace of being respected. Outside my window, I watched our new delivery trucks pull out, all branded with the North Route logo. Simple, clean, honest. Like everything I wanted this company to be. Unlike the cold corporate giants that only remembered your name when they needed something. A knock at my door broke the silence. It was David, our newest team member. Mid-30s, sharp mind, recently laid off from my old company after speaking out about unsafe equipment in the warehouse. They said you might be hiring someone who listens, he told me during his interview. I gave him the job on the spot. He smiled nervously as he stepped in. Hey, I thought you should see this. He handed me a folded newspaper. Business Daily. The front page headline read, Legacy Logistics faces possible collapse after CEO scandal. My old company, my old desk. Now a crumbling empire. According to the article, Kyle had been suspended pending investigation. Allegations ranged from financial mismanagement to employee mistreatment. More than a dozen former employees had come forward. Cynthia had issued a vague statement, saying they were restructuring and evaluating leadership moving forward. But the damage was done. I ran my fingers over the page, feeling not joy, not revenge exactly, but a deep sense of justice. They broke something in me when they pushed me out. They tried to tell me I was done, useless, outdated. And now their own structure, built on arrogance and shortcuts, was falling apart from the inside. David cleared his throat. "There's more," he said, handing me another document. This one, an internal memo, leaked and shared anonymously online. It showed their latest board meeting notes. Item 3 on the agenda, outreach to North Route for potential acquisition or strategic alliance. I let out a slow breath. Even now, with their ship sinking, they wanted to reach back into my world, to pull something from what I built, as if they could buy back what they'd thrown away. I looked up at David. "You think we should take the meeting?" He shook his head. "You already saved us, Joan. You don't owe them anything." And he was right. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about standing in what I'd earned, what I'd rebuilt with my own hands. I stood up, walked to the shredder and dropped the memo in. Let it burn. Let every piece of my past that tried to bury me turn to ash. Because North Route wasn't a rebound, it was a beginning, and the world needed more beginnings, not reboots of broken systems. 2 weeks after the Legacy Logistics article shook the business world, my inbox was flooded. Journalists wanted quotes, former colleagues sent long-winded apologies. A few board members I hadn't heard from in years suddenly remembered my name, offering to catch up over lunch or explore mutual synergies. All of them were polite now, respectful even, but I could see the desperation behind their words. I didn't respond to a single one, let them sit with their silence. The same silence they offered me when I was walked out without warning. Instead, I poured everything into North Route. We were growing faster than I imagined. Clients loved our transparency. Our team was small but fiercely loyal. Every day, someone new reached out. An old warehouse worker, an intern, a logistics manager, all with stories of how Legacy had mistreated them. And all of them wanted something better. They wanted to work with me. One afternoon, Lisa burst into my office with the kind of wide-eyed excitement she usually saved for new project launches. "You're not going to believe this," she said, holding up her phone. A post on LinkedIn was going viral. It was a screenshot of the memo I'd shredded weeks ago, captioned, "You called her useless." She built an empire. Hundreds of thousands of likes, thousands of comments. The whole business world was watching. Not the fall of Legacy, but the rise of someone they underestimated. And then came the call I didn't expect. It was Kyle. I stared at his name on the screen for a long time before answering. His voice was quieter than I remembered, less arrogant. "Joan, I don't know what to say. I was wrong about everything. The company's in trouble. People are leaving. The board's fractured. I think I lost control of it all." I didn't respond. I wanted to ask if maybe we could talk, just talk. I could really use your advice. Hell, your forgiveness. I let the silence stretch for a moment, not out of cruelty, but because I needed it. Then I said, calmly, "I gave you 25 years, Kyle, and you gave me a cardboard box and a security escort. I don't hate you. I don't even think about you most days. But we're not the same people anymore. Joan, please, I have a company to run. Goodbye, Kyle." I hung up and set the phone down gently. Lisa looked at me, wide-eyed. That felt final. I smiled. It was. That night, I stood in the warehouse we'd just leased, 10 times the size of the old one. I watched as forklifts moved, teams collaborated, and packages were prepared with care. North Route wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. And I was finally free from every voice that told me I was too old, too tired, too stuck in my ways. They tried to throw me out like I was trash. But I didn't just bounce back, I rebuilt. And this time, I did it on my terms. Months passed, and our brand became more than a logistics service. North Route was a symbol, a story people clung to when they felt discarded, unseen, or underestimated. I received messages every day, not just from former employees or business partners, but from complete strangers. Joan, I watched you rebuild yourself. I left a toxic job last week because of your story. Your journey gave me the courage to start my own thing. Thank you for showing me age doesn't define capability. Your strength saved me. These words didn't just flatter me. They healed something inside me I hadn't realized was still hurting. I thought revenge would be the most satisfying part of this journey. But it wasn't. It was redemption. It was the knowledge that my story had become a blueprint for others. A quiet revolution written in small acts of courage. One afternoon, I got a letter in the mail. A real letter, handwritten, no logo. The envelope was thick and cream-colored, elegant. I opened it slowly. Inside was an invitation. You are cordially invited to receive the Visionary Trailblazer Award at this year's National Leadership Gala. I blinked, reading it again. The same industry that once called me outdated now called me a trailblazer. The ceremony was held in a grand hall. I wore a navy blue dress and a quiet smile. As I walked onto the stage, the applause was deafening. I saw familiar faces in the crowd, some supporters, some doubters, but they were all clapping now. I took the microphone and paused. My name is Joan, I began, and not long ago, I was told I was useless. The room fell silent. I was called too slow, too rigid, too old. I was told I no longer had a place in the very company I helped build for 25 years. That day broke me in ways I wasn't ready to admit. I looked up and locked eyes with the front row. But then I remembered who I was, not a number on a payroll, not a position to be replaced. I was a builder, a problem solver, a leader, and I didn't need anyone's permission to start over. Applause erupted again. Some stood, some cried. And if anyone here has ever been told you're too old, too slow, too anything, I hope my story reminds you that none of those voices matter. You still have chapters left, and they can be your best ones. When the ceremony ended, a young woman approached me, her hands trembling slightly. Ms. Joan, I'm starting my own logistics startup. I just quit Legacy last week. Could I? Would you ever consider mentoring me? I looked at her, saw the same fire in her eyes that once burned in mine. Let's talk, I said with a smile. I think I might know a few things. It's strange how the moments we think will break us sometimes become the ones that build us into something stronger. Legacy Logistics is barely mentioned in the industry these days. Their rebranding attempt failed. The new CEO fired after internal chaos, lawsuits, and the loss of half their client base. They quietly sold their remaining assets to a mid-tier competitor. And the man who called me useless? Greg disappeared into silence. He tried to join another firm, but every time my name came up as a reference or cautionary tale, doors closed on him. He reached out once, an email, simple, hollow. I was wrong. You didn't deserve that. I hope you're doing well. I never replied, not out of anger, but because I didn't need to anymore. I had moved so far past that version of myself that his words held no power over me now. As for me, I continued growing north route, not because I had something to prove, but because I finally felt aligned with the kind of work, people, and purpose I always dreamed of. We weren't the biggest logistics company, but we were the most respected, transparent, ethical, human, and that meant everything to me. One afternoon, I stood in our warehouse, same floor, where I'd once felt like a background noise in someone else's dream. Now I was the architect, the mentor, the heart of something honest. A young employee, a new recruit, came up to me nervously. Joan, can I ask you something? Of course, I said, lowering my clipboard. Did you ever think of giving up? I looked at him. His question was so raw, so real. All the time, I said. But then I remembered, people only call you useless when they're scared of what you might still become. He nodded slowly, absorbing every word. I smiled and gently tapped his shoulder. Now let's get back to work. We've got something great to build." I walked away then, not as a former employee, not as someone seeking revenge, but as a woman who had risen from the ashes of dismissal and disrespect and turned her pain into a legacy. Not their legacy, my own.